minutes. David Spears is in Melbourne, Michael Rowland in Washington, D.C., as is David Lipson. Michael Rowland, let's start with you. President Trump is saying it's looking good. It's looking good across the country. And Joe Biden telling people who are lined up to vote, who are watching and maybe waiting for those polls to close, no, don't go home if you haven't voted, stay in line.
Every vote will count, especially in those states that still have their ballot boxes open in the central part of the country and certainly on the West Coast. It is looking very good for Donald Trump in Florida. He was always confident of picking up that state. He said all the way through that, don't believe the polls. I know Florida. Of course, he's got his Palm Beach mansion there. He says he knows Floridians and what they really care about. And he believed they were always going to go to his column in the end. Doing pretty well in that Miami-Dade County, largely on the back of Cuban Americans, many of whose parents fled the Castros over the last 50 or 60 years, and also among the Venezuelans, members of the Latino community in South Florida as well. So I think on that basis, that'll overcome the advantage Joe Biden was hoping to get through seniors. A lot of seniors voting for the first time, or certainly in Florida, new seniors enrolling to vote. Such was their enthusiasm this time around. A lot of seniors concerned and in many cases quite cranky about Donald Trump's handling of the pandemic. But you'd have to say at this stage, Florida looks better for Donald Trump than it does for Joe Biden.
Yeah, and David Lipson, if indeed he holds Florida, what does this tell us as well about the campaign strategy here? Because Trump hit Florida hard, also Pennsylvania, also through those formerly known as the Blue Wall states. There was a lot of criticism. Biden got out towards the end. There was also a lot of criticism that Biden was making himself a small target.
Yeah, that's right. And there was concern amongst the Democratic campaign that perhaps they lost the advantage in, for example, Florida, because Donald Trump's teams were out door knocking for weeks and weeks and weeks. That's not a strategy employed by the Democrats, the Democratic campaign. They were worried about the coronavirus and instead injected huge money in advertising in Florida. We were just down there a couple of days ago. We spoke to quite a few Cuban Americans. Their main concern, of course, was the threat they perceived as being posed by a Biden and Harris administration. They thought that Joe Biden as president wouldn't last long and that Kamala Harris would be installed as president, many of them that we spoke to, and that would lead to some sort of socialist government, the likes of which they had fled in places like Cuba and Venezuela. The question may be whether that strong turnout for Latinos there is just Cubans, or whether it's a broader Latino vote, because if that's the case, the latter, then that could spell trouble for Joe Biden. As to the pathway, well, Donald Trump, as you mentioned, needed to win Florida. He needs to win Pennsylvania. Looks like he may be in a very strong position in Florida, so all eyes turn to Pennsylvania. And perhaps that's why Donald Trump was so upset in Pennsylvania over the last couple of days that the court ruling had returned that mail-in ballots could be counted up to 3 days after today. He made some comments about that when he went to campaign headquarters in Virginia earlier today. Let's take a listen.
I think you could know tonight. I think the ruling on Pennsylvania was an unfortunate one by the Supreme Court, because I think we should know what happens on the night. Let people put their ballots in earlier. But you have to have numbers. You can't have these things delayed for many days and maybe weeks. You can't do that. The whole world is waiting.
And David Lipson, turning to you, I'm looking at the New York Times that is saying with 95% certainty now that Donald Trump will hold Florida, which puts him back in the race, and I think maybe diminishes the prospects that we will know the result of this election. Certainly if Joe Biden had grabbed Florida early in the night, we would be in a different situation. But David Spears, the biggest turnout in a century, they're saying. And it's just fascinating to think, what will we think in 24 hours about what does that turnout tell us?
Well, we will know in the coming hours and indeed in the coming days. But But yes, while things are neck and neck, and that's probably not where Biden wants to be in Florida at this stage, as others have pointed out, he doesn't need Florida, Trump does. There's a state, though, that I do want to tell you just quickly about, and that's Ohio, where the results so far are quite favourable to Joe Biden. Now, for a number of reasons, this is interesting to look at this point. It's some of the suburban vote in particular that's going strongly his way. That could give us a clue to what's going to happen in Pennsylvania, which, as David Lipson has pointed out, could end up being the key state here, or one of those most important states that we look at tonight. So if what we're seeing in those suburban votes in Ohio is pointing to what might come in Pennsylvania either tonight or in the coming days, given they won't start counting those early votes until beyond tonight, that will give some encouragement to Joe Biden. But look, really, it's still very much in play based on what we've seen in Florida. But we should know in the next hour get a more granular look at not just Florida, but some of those other battlegrounds as well.
And David, Ellen, Ohio's been a bellwether. Yep. You know, almost always, as Ohio goes, so goes the presidency. I don't know whether you read too much into that because the rules are changing all the time, but it's an interesting thing to ponder.